Hi everybody, my name is Melanie Grothy. I'm 20 years old and I currently have my AA in education, and I am now working on my bachelor's degree in human services. I've been a student at IRSC since 2020, so I'm super excited that this upcoming spring semester will actually be my last semester and I'll be graduating with my bachelor's degree. So let's jump into this. So what I chose to write my paper on and do this presentation on is cybersex and compulsivity. That's a hard word to say, but when I wrote a paper on this, I actually found it super interesting, and I just really loved getting to do all of the research part of it, and it was just really interesting to learn more about it because I know that we had covered some of it in this course, but there's just a lot more that went into it, so I covered a lot of that in my essay, but I'm gonna kind of re-go over some of those points. One of the most important things that I think we need to note when it comes to the cybersex aspect of it is that this a lot of times stems from either prior addictions or mental health issues. Can't be said for every single situation because obviously everybody is so different, and as human service professionals it's our job to be able to assess them and then choose our course of action based off of what's best for their personality and also just what's best for the severity level of their addiction, as well as how the addiction came about, why it is, why they're showing those behaviors, all of that deeper stuff that goes into it. But I think one of the most important things to find out is actually why it started in the first place, and kind of just the why behind it is how we will then be able to jump into the treatment side. So starting with just the mental health issues behind it, it can actually stem from loneliness or relationship issues, all of that kind of thing, like a lack of intimacy is what I was reading about a lot. And this is interesting because there can still actually be addicts who are in happy relationships, who are married, who, I know a lot of people would kind of ask the question, it's like TMI, well, if they're sexually active or if they're in a relationship, what's the need for the online sexual behaviors? But it's very interesting because it's not even, when you look into the research and you read the stories of this going on, it's not even on the same level to the person, just in the same way that you would ask, well, they've been married for 10 years. Let's just say an example, Bob and Lisa have been married for 10 years and Bob has a drinking addiction. Some people may say, well, Lisa's okay with him drinking and they casually drink all the time, so why is it that he feels the need to hide his drinking from her and closet drink when she's okay with him drinking and they drink together? So it's kind of that mental aspect of why do they need this addiction when they already have it on this side? But it's because addiction is not something that the person is actively choosing to be addicted to. A lot of times there is a gateway issue that brings them into the addiction. So for a lot of the younger groups, it can be being exposed to pornography at a young age, and that can cause the addiction, and that can cause them to search out and seek those sexual behaviors online later on. For other people, it can be kind of traumas in their life, like loss of employment, loss of a spouse, any hardship that you can think of can also trigger it, because it is also used as a coping mechanism for some people. So in the same way that drinking or drugs are used when a person is going through something hard, people will go use cybersex as an escape from their actual life. So now that we kind of have an idea of how it can start, why it can start, the different ways it can start, I want to kind of talk about how deep it can affect the person and when you know whether or not it's problematic. Obviously, for diagnosing our clients in the future and knowing what treatment to give them, we need to know when the behaviors go from just excessive to actually problematic, or high use to problematic use is something that we talk about a lot. So some of the indicators that I talked about in my paper were basically talking about I'm having a brain moment right now. But basically, it's like the level would be, okay, if they're able to still hold a job, hold their relationships, versus if they are like losing their job, not showing up to work, they're not putting time into their relationships. Like if it's taking up all of their time being online and doing that, obviously you would know it's problematic. It's not like a foolproof chart that I put in there, but it's like you'll understand it and you'll get it when you're in the field and you're actually dealing with those peoples. Like that's why I encourage anyone who listens to my presentation, like if you literally just go on Google and look up like cyber sex and compulsivity like stories, or like I don't know, I was seeing a lot of like even Reddit things pop up of people like sharing their own experiences, and it was really, really interesting for me, like from a human services like point of view, to like read all those stories. And like that's even a good like exercise for all of us to do, and then like think like, oh, how would we treat that client? Because it really is helpful to get like, I know it's not real life, but to get those like stories and to hear that, because then you're getting real life examples of how it can come about and how it happens and all the issues. And that's another big thing, it affects the family and the friends and the whole family system, not just the person. But it really is a big complex thing. And then the compulsivity aspect of it also makes it that much more intense, because obviously once the person reaches that point where it's no longer high use, it's problematic use, like we were talking about, then that's when it's a compulsive behavior. It's something that they cannot stop. It's something that they will try to stop, and they will still not be able to stop their behavior of cyber sex, whatever it may be, like pornography, online chat rooms, whatever. So that's when it becomes like compulsive, which is an addiction, and that's when they need intervention. This relates to the field of human services and substance abuse greatly, because although we may not view cyber sex as a substance, they're still abusing something, and it's an addiction, and they're still using those addictive compulsive behaviors to either cope with something, to not feel lonely, to escape their life. So it's on the same level as being addicted to a drug, and that's something that I talked about in my paper. They keep going back for more. It is not, you think of cyber sex as like, oh, they'll get over it, nobody does that much, it is an addiction just as bad as anything else, and it's worthy of our help just as much as any other issue out there. Some resources for anybody struggling with this, one of the best ones that I kept seeing pop up during my research was Sex Addicts Anonymous, which seems similar to any kind of like AA meeting type of group. And it is also nice that it's anonymous, because there can be a lot of guilt and shame surrounding like these sexual behaviors. So that was a great one that I saw during my research. There's also one called Sex Compulsives Anonymous, which I believe is also pretty similar. When I did research on that one, it's a kind of the same thing, that it was like very similar to like a AA meeting type of structure, and it definitely has that 12-step program embedded into it. And then there's NAMI, which I'm also gonna put on my resources. This one is more mental health focused, which I think is great, because as we talked about before, this mostly stems from mental health issues, so it kind of gets to that deep root cause, but they do definitely deal with the like deviant sexual behavior side of it. So that's another great resource. So thank you guys so much for listening to my entire presentation, and this was definitely really interesting for me to research on and talk about, so I hope I did a good job explaining it all to you guys. And obviously let me know in our little discussion if y'all have any questions or anything. I can definitely answer it. And yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to my presentation.